Jasmine Harper had not set foot on the open sea with his daughter since the day her mother died. The ocean had taken so much from him already, his partner, his peace, and nearly his will to continue fishing altogether. But it was all he knew, and it was how he survived. Every morning before sunrise, he pushed off the dock in his weathered old boat, cast his lines and hoped the sea would be kind. Back home, 10-year-old Lena waited. She cooked simple meals, swept the porch, and sometimes sat by the window for hours watching the waves. She never complained, never cried, but she always asked the same thing. "Can I go with you next time, Dad?" The answer was always no, not because he didn't want her there, but because the thought of losing her too made it hard to breathe. Then came her 10th birthday. That morning, Jasmine rose early, but not to prep the boat. He moved quietly through the kitchen and, for the first time in years, made breakfast himself. Scrambled eggs, toast with jam, a warm mug of cocoa. He even lit a single candle at the table. When Lena walked in, the scent of cinnamon and butter filled the room. She froze, then smiled wide. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," he said. They ate together. She teased him for the slightly burnt toast, and just before clearing the plates, she asked again, just once more. "Please, Dad, just today. I won't ask again." He looked into her eyes, saw her hope, her understanding, and he nodded. They packed sandwiches, water, a blanket, no fishing gear, no lines, just the two of them. The wind was gentle, the sea was calm, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a grave. It felt like a beginning. The boat cut quietly across the morning waters, its old motor humming just beneath the wind's whisper. Jasmine let Lena sit near the bow, wrapped in her favorite blue hoodie, legs swinging gently off the side. She leaned over now and then, watching the sun ripple across the waves, laughing when a seabird dove too close. Instead of quiet, the boat was filled with questions, Lena's voice bubbling with wonder at every splash, cloud, and breeze. Lena couldn't sit still. From the moment they left the dock, her eyes danced from wave to sky and back again. She pointed out every bird, every flash of silver beneath the surface, and even tried to name the shapes of the clouds above them. "Is that one a dragon?" she asked, grinning, her face lit with pure wonder. Jasmine smiled behind the wheel. He hadn't seen her this animated in years. She leaned over the rail, fingers trailing just above the surface, completely entranced. "It's so big out here," she whispered. "It feels like we're floating in the sky." Then she spotted it, that dark shape in the distance, the strange ripple moving where no ripple should be. "Dad, what's that?" she said, voice shifting from awe to concern. Jasmine followed her gaze. At first he saw nothing unusual, just open ocean, miles of it. Then he noticed it too, a dark shape, small but moving, not with the current but against it. He frowned, probably driftwood. But it wasn't drifting. He steered the boat toward it, curiosity growing in his chest. The closer they got, the clearer the shape became. Not wood, not a seal, something else. Jasmine reached for the binoculars, adjusted the lens, and his breath caught. It was a dog, a large one. German shepherd, maybe. Head barely above water, paddling with exhausted limbs, mouth dipping beneath the surface every few seconds. "Lena, get the blanket ready," he said sharply. She didn't ask why. The dog was too far gone to make a sound. His strokes were slow, uneven, each wave a new battle. Eli's chest tightened. They were still a few dozen yards away, but the urgency clawed at him. He cut the motor, dropped anchor, and without hesitation dove in. The cold was immediate, salty, stinging, but he kept his eyes on the dog, on the sheer desperation in those fading movements. Something about it wasn't just survival, it was a plea. The water was colder than Jasmine expected, stealing his breath the moment he hit the surface. But he didn't stop. He cut through the swells, arms burning, eyes fixed on the dog just ahead. The closer he got, the more dire it became. The dog's legs barely moved now, weak, jerking motions that barely pushed him forward. His head bobbed low, mouth gasping just above the waves. He didn't see Eli. He was beyond noticing. Jasmine reached him just as his body dipped under. He lunged, wrapping an arm around the dog's chest, lifting his snout above the water. "Got you," he muttered through clenched teeth. The dog didn't respond. Dead weight. Jasmine turned, kicking hard toward the boat. Every stroke was a struggle. He wasn't just carrying the dog's body, he was carrying exhaustion, fear, and the silent weight of something that should have been impossible. At the boat, Lena stood ready. She threw down a rope ladder, then reached as far as she could over the edge. "Come on, Dad, you can do it!" Jasmine pushed the dog upward, using the last of his strength. The moment the dog's paws touched the ladder, instinct kicked in. He clawed his way up, collapsing onto the deck with a wet, gasping thud. Jasmine followed, drenched and trembling, knees buckling beneath him. He dropped beside the dog, brushing salt water from its fur. Its chest rose. Barely, but it rose. "You're okay," Jasmine whispered. "You're okay now." Lena dropped beside him, wrapping the dog in the blanket, her hands gentle and shaking. Together they sat on the deck, wind curling around them, the sea quieter now. They didn't know where he came from or why. But in that moment, as they sat together on the deck, they understood one thing. He was no longer alone. By the time they reached the marina, the sun was higher in the sky, casting golden streaks across the calm water. The dog hadn't moved much. Wrapped in the blanket, she lay curled near Lena's feet, breathing shallow but steady. Jasmine tied the boat and scooped her up carefully, his arms trembling from effort and adrenaline. She didn't resist, just blinked slowly, as if trying to understand where she was. They didn't go home. Instead, Jasmine drove straight to a small veterinary clinic on the edge of town. It was quiet, tucked between a bait shop and an old bookstore. As they stepped inside, a bell chimed gently above the door. A young receptionist looked up, startled at the sight of the soaking man, his daughter, and the limp dog cradled in his arms. "She almost drowned," Jasmine said. "Out there, miles off the coast. No ID, no collar, nothing." So, the receptionist nodded quickly and disappeared into the back. Within moments, a vet emerged. A woman in her early 30s, ponytail tucked under a ball cap, eyes sharp with focus. She didn't ask many questions, just motioned them to follow. Jasmine laid the dog gently on the exam table, while Lena hovered close, gripping the edge. After what felt like forever, the vet returned. Her sleeves were rolled up, and there was a faint line of sweat across her brow. She gave Jasmine a small nod. "She's going to be okay. She's tired, dehydrated, a bit scraped up, but overall she's strong." Lena let out a breath she'd been holding the whole time. Jasmine gave a small, grateful nod. "No microchip," the vet added, glancing at a clipboard. "No tag, no collar. It's like she dropped out of the sky." She paused, then looked at them both carefully. "And she's pregnant." The room went still. Lena blinked. "Wait, what?" "She's carrying," the vet repeated gently. "Not far along, but definitely. I'd say just a few weeks." Jasmine stared at the dog. She lay quiet on the exam table, her breathing still shallow but steady. Nothing in her posture had changed, but suddenly, everything felt different. "She was fighting for more than just herself," he said under his breath. Lena reached out and touched the dog's paw. "She saved them, didn't she? The ones inside her." The vet smiled faintly. "Looks like it." They stood there for a while, all three of them just watching her. No more words were needed. There was something sacred about that silence. They brought her home just as the sun began to dip, the sky burning with amber and violet. The little house smelled of sea salt and old wood, but somehow it felt softer that evening. Jasmine had cleared a quiet corner in the living room. He laid out an old dog bed, fluffed a faded blanket, and placed a bowl of water beside it. The dog hesitated at the doorway, her paws shaky on the hardwood floor, her body moving like it still didn't trust the ground beneath her. Lena crouched down near the bed and waited. She didn't speak. She just held out her hand, open, palm up. It took nearly 5 minutes for the dog to approach, but she did, slowly, carefully, until her nose brushed against Lena's fingers. That was enough. Lena smiled and whispered, "It's okay. This is home now." Jasmine watched from the kitchen, arms crossed. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. The rest of the evening passed in quiet rhythm. Lena barely left her side. She brought tiny bites of boiled chicken, set down fresh water again and again, even played soft music on the old radio to fill the silence. "She hasn't barked once," Lena murmured later, brushing the dog's coat with careful fingers. "She doesn't need to," Jasmine replied from across the room. "She's listening, watching." That night, Lena fell asleep beside her on the floor, her small hand resting on the dog's back. The dog didn't move away, and by morning something had changed. The dog stood up, slowly, stiffly, but on her own. She walked across the room with purpose, stopped in front of Lena, and sat down. And for the first time, her tail moved, just a little, but it was the beginning. Over the next few days, the dog, whom Lena had named Nixie, grew stronger. She didn't bark. She didn't beg. She just stayed close. She followed Lena like a shadow, alert but calm, always settling herself between the girl and the door. It wasn't just loyalty. It was instinct. Jasmine couldn't ignore the signs anymore. The way Nixie moved through the house was silent precision. The way she reacted not to sound, but to potential threats. When Lena dropped a plate and it shattered, Nixie didn't flinch. She simply stood, tense and watching the doorway. "She's not just a dog," Jasmine muttered one evening. "She's trained." That night, long after Lena had gone to bed, Jasmine sat at the kitchen table, staring at the rusted metal tag they'd found in her fur. One letter barely remained, K. He couldn't shake the feeling that it meant something more. He got up, dug through an old box in the closet, and found a prepaid phone. Inside the same box was a weathered business card. Martin Hayes, Defense Logistics, retired. Jasmine hesitated, then dialed. "Hayes," came the voice on the other end. "Martin, it's Jasmine Harper. I need to ask you something unusual." They talked for over an hour. Martin had heard whispers, military K-9 units going missing, not AWOL, stolen, taken from bases, smuggled, sold. "You said the tag had a K. Could be designation. K-9s are categorized that way. Some of the untraceable ones, they're made to disappear." Jasmine sat in silence long after the call ended. Across the room, Nixie lifted her head, met his eyes for a moment, then rested again. He looked at the tag one last time and whispered, "They didn't just lose you. They erased you." Jasmine didn't sleep that night. He lay awake, eyes on the ceiling, his mind running in circles. He kept seeing Nixie's face, calm, alert, loyal, and then the file in his head. Missing K-9 units, stolen dogs, lives erased. By morning, the weight in his chest had only grown heavier. Lena woke early and found him sitting on the porch, a cup of cold coffee untouched in his hands. "You're up early," she said, climbing onto the step beside him. "I never went to sleep," Jasmine admitted. Lena tilted her head, studying him. "Is something wrong with Nixie?" He sighed. "No, not exactly." He told her everything. Not all the dark parts, but enough. About the rumors, about the call, about how Nixie might have been taken from somewhere that once needed her. Lena didn't cry. She listened. When he finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. "Do we have to give her back?" she asked, her voice small. Jasmine didn't answer right away. "I don't know if she belongs here." But I also don't know if she belongs wherever she came from. Lena stared at the sky, hugging her knees. She didn't ask to be dropped in the middle of the ocean, she said softly. She survived. She came to us. That has to mean something. Jasmine looked at his daughter, then at the door where Nixie lay sleeping. You're right, he said. She didn't come here for no reason. He stood up slowly. If she's got a story, then we're going to help her finish it. It took Jasmine 2 more days to find someone who would actually talk. An old contact of his, Rick Jensen, used to work security at a private training facility. He owed Jasmine a favor and reluctantly agreed to meet at a roadside diner outside town. Rick was already waiting in a booth when Jasmine arrived, Lena in tow. So, Rick said, stirring his coffee, you've got one of ours. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. She's not yours anymore. Rick looked down, didn't think anyone would find her. He explained that Nixie had been part of a special K-9 unit, tactical, highly trained. Something had gone wrong during a mission, and when she refused a new handler, she was discarded. They couldn't control her, Rick muttered, and they don't like liabilities. Lena's eyes widened. They just threw her away? Rick nodded once. Out to sea, like trash. Eli's fist clenched. She's not trash. She's a survivor. Rick slid over a small card, black with only a symbol embossed in silver. This is the unit. It's private. Technically doesn't exist, but she might still have a place, if she wants it. Jasmine glanced at Lena, who was already staring at the card. She deserves a choice, Lena said firmly. The next day they drove Nixie to the address. A gate, cameras, silence. Jasmine stepped out first, hands raised. We're not here for trouble. A man appeared, military posture, calm eyes. He didn't speak. He looked down at Nixie, who stood tall, gaze steady. Then the man nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure, but it was acknowledgement. And sometimes that's the first step toward justice. The truth came out faster than Jasmine expected. Once Nixie was scanned at the facility, an internal investigation was launched. Within days, a hidden chain of abuse and cover-ups unraveled. 3 former handlers, including the one assigned to Nixie during her last mission, were arrested, charged with cruelty, unauthorized disposal of military assets, and obstruction. They thought no one would care about a dog, the investigator had said. They were wrong. Lena had watched the news report with wide eyes. Jasmine had simply stared in silence, jaw clenched. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came quietly. A week later, Jasmine and Lena returned to the facility. Nixie met them at the gate, calm, focused, different. There was pride in her posture and a sense of closure in her gaze. She's asked to go back on duty, the officer told them. She's ready. Lena hugged her tightly, burying her face into the thick fur. You'll be amazing, she whispered. Nixie pressed her head into the girl's chest. Then she turned and walked back toward the training fields. No hesitation, no fear. Weeks passed. Then one quiet morning, Jasmine heard soft scratching at the porch. He opened the door. Nixie stood there, and beside her, a small pup, brown, clumsy, wide-eyed. He barked once, unsure of himself. Nixie looked up at Eli, tail wagging just slightly. She hadn't come to stay, she'd come to give back. The puppy didn't take long to settle in. Lena named him Tide after the sea that had brought so much change to their lives. He was clumsy, curious, and never left her side, tripping over his own paws, chewing on boots, chasing shadows. But at night when the house grew quiet, he would curl up exactly where Nixie used to sleep. Near the fireplace, one paw always stretched out, as if reaching for something that wasn't there. Jasmine often found himself watching him in silence, wondering what pieces of Nixie had passed on. She chose him for us, Lena would say. He's part of her. And that was enough. Time passed. The pain of what Nixie had been through slowly turned into quiet pride. She had survived. She had fought. And in her own way, she had come home, not to stay, but to heal something broken. Their days found rhythm again. Jasmine went back to the sea, Lena started painting, and Tide grew stronger, bolder, more confident by the week. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, Lena stood on the porch with Tide at her feet. She looked out at the ocean, the wind brushing strands of hair across her face. "Do you think she'll come back?" she asked softly. Jasmine stood behind her, hands in his pockets. "Maybe, but even if she doesn't..." He looked down at Tide, who was staring at the horizon too. "She never truly left us." As the final rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the horizon, Tide let out a soft, hopeful bark, echoing the enduring presence of Nixie in their lives.